Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Every Day is Friday. I'm your host, Matty B43. Today, we got a super incredible guest joining us, someone who's doing amazing things in their field, all the way from Australia. Please welcome Melissa.
Hi, thank you so much.
Yeah, for our listeners who may not be familiar with your line of work yet, could you give us a quick rundown of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a full-time stay-at-home mama and doing the most important work I'll ever do, really. I unschool my two beautiful kids, and I think I know I'm on a mission to live and create, build a really intentional life. I want to show my kids that this one life that we have really is a life worth living and how we do that on purpose.
That's great. If you had a chance to describe unschooling in a few words, what would you call it besides homeschooling?
Yeah, it's a very different concept to homeschooling, even though we use it interchangeably. Unschooling is a term which we use because effectively we have to unschool ourselves. We've been so trapped and conditioned in a system where we are so used to somebody else telling us what to do. So unschooling really is getting free from that narrative of conditioning. And then if we say we unschool our children, it's following an approach where it's a child led approach where we follow their interests. We trust that they are intrinsically motivated to learn, and that if we provide the opportunities, that they will do just that. So I guess, in short, it's a child led way of looking at education. Just, yeah.
No, it's a great way to put it. I mean, what's one of the unexpected benefits of unschooling that most people wouldn't know?
Oh, great question. I think naturally it allows you to teach your kids real life. And that almost sounds counterintuitive, but when you go to school and then what school does is prepare you for college, and then college prepares you for university, and then university prepares you for real life, and then you come out and you're not prepared for real life. At every stage you're like, oh, this is not what I thought. Oh, this is not what I thought. And it doesn't really do the job. Then you still go out into life and you're like, it's so hard. So I think what unschooling does is it really truly lets my children live in the world, lets them live in the world at every age and every stage. So I never have to send them out into the big wide world as such. They live in the world in different age appropriate ways in every stage of their life. So they're a part of community at large all the time, if that makes sense. And it's really powerful in that way.
Yeah, I mean, how do you prepare your kids for the real world without like a traditional classroom?
Yeah, because we are not used to this way of education, I get that question a lot actually, and people can't comprehend doing it in a different way. But in my mind, I'm like, I can't now comprehend how the classroom does that. It doesn't. The way we prepare our kids for the real world is just by living with them in the real world. So we do life together all day, every day. If we've got to go to the farm to pick up the raw milk, they come with us. They see where it's made, they see where it comes from, they pick it up, we deliver it. We count out the dollars, we do math in that way. If I have to go to the bank because we've got to do a mortgage, they come with us. They're involved in very rich everyday conversations. We grow, things at home, and we prepare our food, and they're just involved in real life every day, all day, and like how we look after the planet, how we look after our bodies, how we show up every day, how we choose to design our day. You know, what is important? How do we meet our needs? How do we emotionally regulate? Our days are filled with so much real life that I can't comprehend them being in a classroom because they would miss out. They would miss out on real life and therefore not be prepared for real life. So I feel like we live in the real world every day. If that makes sense.
No, that's a great takeaway. Definitely something to think a lot about. I mean, how do you teach your kids how to love learning?
Oh, I love this question. I love this question so much. So the way I always see it is, you know how our kids reach these incredible milestones in their life that we don't have to teach them. For example, a baby learns to roll all by themselves. We don't physically manhandle them and roll them over until they roll. They start to roll by themselves. Then they start to sit by themselves. And then they pull up by themselves. And they walk by themselves. And then they talk by themselves. You don't force those words to come out of their mouth. Intrinsically, they are so curious and internally motivated to learn. But then all of a sudden we believe that when they turn 5 and 6 and 7, their love for learning and their curiosity is naturally going to disappear or dissipate. So now we have to take it into our own hands and we've got to put them into a system to continue their love for learning. But what we are really doing is we are now saying to them, all this learning that you've been doing, you know, is not right as such, and now I'm going to take it into my own hands. Whereas if we allowed that process to keep unfolding as it has been for 5 or 6 or 7 years before they go to school, you'd be blown away to see that they don't stop learning. They've loved learning all along. We kind of squash it by not allowing that curiosity to naturally flow. We all of a sudden try to control it so much that they forget how to do that naturally, because all of a sudden they've got to learn about things that we tell them to learn about. So they're not interested in it. And so sometimes it then looks like, oh, they don't like learning anymore, but they just don't like learning about the things that we now prescribe, right? They love learning all along. We just need to let them follow that process naturally. Yeah.
No, that's a great takeaway. I mean, what's something your kids taught you about life?
Oh, wow. Yes, there are a lot, and I'm sure all parents say that, irrespective of how you school them or how you parent them. I think the main one for me is that they mirror me, right? So if I look at my kids and there are unwanted behaviors that I see, I have to be willing to look in the mirror, which effectively is them, and go, what is that reflecting right back at me? Is it something that I've done, or is it an energy that I'm, an environment that I'm creating? So I think the biggest thing that I learn all the time is that there is so much room for growth and so much room for learning, personal self-development, if I'm willing to look in the mirror. And I never expected that, to be really honest. I thought, I'm the parent and I'm going to teach my kids all this stuff, and then they come into my life and they mirror all these things back to me, and I will learn more from them than they will ever learn from me in this lifetime. Yeah.
That's a fresh way to look at it. Really insightful.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I mean, for what's one thing you think every parent should know before trying unschooling?
Oh, that's a great question. I love that one. Well, there's two things really. I'd say there's two things. The first thing is that you're not your kid's teacher. You don't have to hold a formal teaching education at all. You are your kid's guide, mentor, companion. Like you actually have the privilege to walk this path with them. I see myself as their spiritual companion. So if you see yourself in that way, it takes a lot of the pressure off. You don't have to feel like I have to have it all together. I need to know the curriculum. I need to know how to do this math. I need to know how to educate. Which leads me to the second thing, which is exactly that. Your kids will show you the way. You have to just be. You have to just be willing to show up. You have to just be willing to see them for who they really are. Not in comparison to every other kid, not in comparison to the curriculum, not in comparison to what they are supposed to know by 7 or by 8, just for who they really are. So you look at the kid in front of you and they go, well, they're 7, but they're not interested in reading yet. That's my son. But if he was at school right now, he'd get ridiculed for it. He would be seen as behind, not on par, like not up to standard. But it is such a narrow measure. They don't ask him what he knows about nutrition because he can tell you a whole lot about what's in our food and what heals us and what doesn't heal us. And in my opinion, he's going to learn to read eventually, but are all kids going to learn how to heal themselves naturally with the power of food by going to school? So how are we measuring? So I guess for anybody thinking of unschooling, it doesn't have to be that daunting. Your kid will show you the way if you truly see them for who they are and the path that they are on, and you get the privilege to walk it alongside them. Like, what a privilege. You get to learn and grow and hold their hand walking it. You don't have to be the teacher as such. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great takeaway. I mean, what made you decide to go down this path of unschooling your kids?
Yeah. It's been a process and a journey, as I'm sure, all of our lives is that. And I wasn't unschooled by any means. I went to a traditional school. I did do homeschooling for a couple of years, but not for the same reasons that I unschool my kids, more because we were playing tennis and we needed to be free from school to travel to play tournaments. So more by necessity for sport reasons. But it was a combination of things, I think, giving birth, and which was really the rebirth of me. And I've heard a lot of mums say that when you realize, wow, this is me not in control of, but having this opportunity to lead another person's life. It is such a huge, powerful awakening in a way that I just realized that marketing is not what I'm going to do with my life. Corporate ladder climbing, all that stuff that I thought I was going to do is not what I was going to do with my life. So I think it started with introspection. It started with that rebirth of myself and going, what is it that I can offer and realizing, I guess, that I can offer my kid what no one else can offer my kid. And the minute I realized that no one else, no teacher, no one with any grand qualification will ever be able to replace me in my child's life, that was the moment that I was like, I need to raise him. If there's stuff I don't know, I can learn it. If there's, things we need to do, we can go there. But it's me he needs, and the moment he needs other things and other people, I will be the one that can recognize that. and I will be the one that can open up those opportunities. I am the one that's in tune, and he needs me. The realization of that, the weight of that, it's like, whoa, like you are replaceable in every other area of your life. Replace me at work in a heartbeat, no matter how valued I am. Replace me everywhere else but at home. So then where am I most valued? Where's my value really? So I felt really called to sit in that purpose. And yeah, that's really where it leads. Where it led, yeah.
No, that's a fresh way to look at things. I mean, how do you decide what's most important to teach your kids in unschooling?
I see my role as a facilitator, and like I touched on before, their spiritual companion, and I get to walk this path with them, which then means I don't decide. I don't decide at all, to be honest. I let them decide, and I don't say that in a very permissive way, like I am so hands off that they just do whatever. I say that with the most respect and attunement, like looking at them and the connection that we have and going, oh, you are really into this right now. Like he's really into being a ninja right now, okay? So that's what's going on in our house. So we do a lot of things that really fosters, that love. Reading books, playing games, like exploring all of those skills. So there are so many ways that they learn naturally within the thing that they're interested in that I don't have to decide. I just have to open up the pathways, expose them. So if he's like using that example of being a ninja, this morning my husband took him to a parkour playground because he's a ninja and they jump and they do these amazing skills. So it's like, wow. So physical activity, naturally we tick that box. And then we've been looking at books and doing activities. So we're doing reading, we're doing writing, we're doing so many things without me forcing a curriculum. We're just really harboring like that interest and that curiosity. And it's incredible how, without thinking about it, you naturally tick so many boxes when you just follow the curiosity. Like I think about it for myself, the things I wasn't that interested in learning at school, I don't remember them now, we don't. The things that you were really interested in when you learned them, you remember them and they've made an impact on you. So it's the timing and it's the content. So they show you the content, they show you what they're interested in. And then, yeah, it's just opening up all the little pathways in which we can expose them to new things. Yeah.
No, what you just said is going to stick with me for a while. That's really good. I mean, are there any key values or lessons you hope to pass on to your kids through unschooling?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a way of being. I think the whole concept, the whole paradigm, the narrative is a way of being rather than, we spend X amount of time teaching this or learning this. It's truly allowing them to be exactly who it is they are in every moment. So I think, the main thing is authenticity, because there's this really, really powerful thing that we know from the literature that, Gabor Mate, which is a trauma expert, he talks about this often. He says that we have two human needs at our really, really deep core. And this is true for everyone, but more so for children when they're younger. We have a need for attachment because we cannot physically survive when we are born. We cannot physically survive without a caretaker. We will perish. So we have that physical need for attachment for survival. And then we also have this deep need for authenticity. So each of us want to truly be ourselves and be accepted unconditionally 100% for that. But here's the thing. The minute your authenticity threatens the attachment, attachment always wins. So, because attachment is linked to survival, the minute you're being authentic and you're being yourself, you're doing something that's you, but you're not being accepted for it. You are scared that, oh, if I behave in that way, if I'm truly authentic, I might lose my attachment. She might love me less. She might say, oh, if you're being too loud, I'm going to move myself away over here because I don't like what you're doing. So your authenticity, you being you, is too much for me right now. I can't unconditionally accept you. So that is threatening the attachment. And attachment always wins. So we will, as humans, abandon our authenticity. We will say, that's okay. I won't be myself. What I'll do instead is be exactly what you want me to be so that I can stay attached to you because my survival depends on it for kids. So we raise kids who subconsciously, over years and years and years, change just tiny little bits of themselves, abandon their authentic selves to preserve attachment. And so then we have generations of people who have to recover from their childhood, who have to go and find themselves. And so for me, unschooling is just another piece of the puzzle where we get to be ourselves. We get to do what we want and be unconditionally accepted for it. We don't have to fit in a box that is school or a system in order to be accepted by anybody. We get to be authentic and we get to be attached. And we don't then, as adults, have to spend our time recovering from a childhood. You know, we get to continue to be ourselves and show up powerfully, authentically in this world. So for me, it's authenticity. It's true authenticity as a way of being through childhood into adulthood.
That's a great takeaway. I'm hoping that all the listeners are taking this in and really looking into everything they can do to be authentic to themselves and to others. I mean, how do you make sure your kids are learning like the same things as the kids in the traditional schools?
Mm-hmm. I get that question a lot as well, because naturally that's what we know in terms of the measure. So for me, I've had to completely shift and reframe for myself how I will measure. What is the measure? Is there a measure? What is the thing that we measure our kids' success by? If they're in a traditional school, you know, it's by their grades, it's by their peers, it's by whether they tick the boxes in the subjects that we have predetermined for them. For me, it took time, and it definitely sometimes still comes up for me. We're never completely immune to it because we were raised in the system. So it comes up for me, those measures, but I've reframed it for me, that for myself, that's not a measurement. So If that's not a measurement, we don't aim to teach the same things. So I don't. So the thing with unschooling, and look, there are various variations of homeschooling, unschooling, child-led learning, and you've got to do what works for your family. For us, I would call us radical unschoolers, which is we follow zero curriculum at all. With all due respect, I don't even read the curriculum. I tried to, and I find myself then subconsciously trying to push them into these directions because now I know, oh, they're supposed to learn this. So I noticed that within myself, and so I stopped reading the curriculum altogether. I never, ever, ever read the curriculum. The curriculum is not a base, it's not a foundation, it's not a measure for us. For me, if I look at measure for my kids' success is, do they feel safe? Do they feel safe to come to me? Do they feel safe to be themselves within this environment? Are they curious? That's a huge one. If they are naturally curious, if they keep asking those big, tricky questions and why and why and why, and they want to know, and they're willing to go down the path to find the answer. Oh, let's go find that book in the library. Let's go see if we can talk to this guy who might know. Let's look at a video for that. Oh, I remember this story. If they're truly curious and they follow that path, I'm like, that curiosity is what will take them wherever they want to go. Like, so do I teach them, what other kids learn in school? Absolutely not. Do I care to? Absolutely not. Do I even know what kids learn in school? Absolutely not. Do I intentionally choose to just completely isolate us from that? Absolutely. Yeah.
At the other hand, are you worried that your kids might miss out at socializing with peers in a school setting?
Oh, I was waiting for this one. Because it's very, very common for people to think that school is where kids go to socialize. And it could not be further from the truth. Just because you are playing with someone at school doesn't mean that in a socializing context that is healthy or right for you. It simply means that you're playing with someone at school. And it means that you're playing with someone that's in your class or in your group, and those people have been predetermined for you. And look, not to say you don't make some beautiful friends and amazing, friendship and connections at school. I'm not taking away from any of that. But the reality is you are put within four walls, and those are your people, whether you want them to be your people or not, right? So is that healthy socialization? I'm not so sure. Within our community, or how we do it, we get to intentionally seek out how we fill our day. We are not confined by four walls in any way. So on this day, we go to a nature group and we meet some beautiful souls that are very, very aligned because they are there too. They intentionally sought them out. So how does that socialization compare all of a sudden? And look, on another day, we go to science, and there we find a whole lot of souls that have intentionally sought that out. And so how does that look for socialization and alignment? So the moment you start to seek out intentionally, follow your child's interest, you meet a whole lot of other people that are so aligned. And yes, are the groups smaller? Absolutely. But does that mean the socialization is less? Maybe in terms of quantity, Sure. But in terms of quality, and so I'd rather my kids have 5 really aligned, amazing friends than have 100 that they've been forced to play with and it means nothing. Um, so on the whole, I will tell you that it's an absolute myth. Homeschool kids are so very well socialized, and they are often better socialized because they don't just interact with peers of their same age. They interact with people of all ages within the community, right? We have to speak to the lady at the library to get the resources that we need. We have to talk to the guy at the store to get the supplies that we need. We have to speak to the farmer and have a conversation to see what the cows are being fed, what's in the milk that we drink. So they're a lot more integrated, and we think socialization comes from playing with a friend that is your age, because that's what we see in school. And now we've given that the label of socialization, and it's not true. That is not an accurate measure of what socialization is. So just because a 10-year-old kid, for example, is able to play with 100 other 10-year-old kids does not mean they are properly socialized. It just means a whole lot of 10-year-old kids, all with undeveloped brains, are running around chasing each other, you know? Whereas in a homeschool environment where we're truly integrated in the community, we get to learn how to interact with adults, how to interact with older people, how to interact with younger people, how to give way to smaller kids. Like, it's a much more well-rounded way of being social and integrated within a community. So we have plenty of friends, and we have friends of all ages and stages in a very integrated way in the community.
That's a valuable point. I'm sure a lot of listeners will resonate with that. I mean, how do you handle like criticism from like family and friends about unschooling?
Yeah. Um, yep.
It's there, it has to be.
Oh, yeah, that's a thing. That's definitely a thing. I think in the earlier days, when you're sort of when your kids are approaching school age, and you naturally get that, like, oh, he's going to school next year, or, you know, naturally when
Hmm.
you get to a certain age, and then you got to get a girlfriend, and then you got to get married, and then you get asked, oh, when are you having kids, and when are you having the second kid, just naturally they get to that age. And so in those early days, it's a bit of a shock to a lot of people, and you get all of these questions. I think I've done the research. I've gone down that rabbit hole as far as that rabbit hole could possibly take me. And I know what I know, and I believe in what we are doing. And so I think for me, the way I handle it is by simply not even trying to defend or justify it. You know, if there's any kind of criticism, I just feel very strong and confident in our approach. And because I think there's a lot of lack of education in this area, I definitely enjoy and am open to having conversation. And I can reference the literature, and I know some really good stuff that helps people see things in a different way. But I think on the whole, I just never defend or never justify, in the same way that the large majority is so confident in sending their kids to school, and you don't feel like you have to justify it. You don't feel like you have to explain why your kid's going to school. I'm the same. I don't feel like I've got to explain why I want to raise my kids. It blows my mind sometimes, you know, when that question even comes up. So what, you're going to teach them? I'm like, well, I'm going to raise them. Yeah, I'm going to raise them so that I can be the biggest influence in their life now more than ever. So yeah, I think it's being really confident, I think. And I am. I know why we're doing what we're doing, and I see the results. My kids, well, especially my 7-year-old, he's a very, very strong-willed little boy, which is so triggering sometimes. But this is the fruit. This is him knowing exactly who he is at a very young age, and he stands in his power. So if I ever forget why, I look at him and it's all the validation I need. So yeah, it comes down to that. It comes down to really knowing why and being confident in that.
Yeah, when you're doing the unschooling, is there any resources or like tools or courses you feel could make unschooling easier?
Yeah, look, there's a lot that we do, um, but here's the beauty of it. Just like life for everybody, it ebbs and flows in seasons. During a season when I was pregnant and tired, we did less. And in that season, it's also beautiful lesson for him that this is what happens to the female body when she's carrying a baby, and this is how that needs to be nurtured. He's not somewhere in a kindy isolated from really what it means to grow a human being. He's really a part of that. And in other seasons when, the sun is shining and we've got energy and we're well, we do a whole lot. Our days are jam packed. So it probably depends on where in the world you are and how big the communities are and exactly what it is that you're looking for. But I feel like here where we are in Australia, in Perth on the West Coast, there's a lot. The homeschool community here is really, really big and healthy and thriving. And there are so many things to do that I couldn't do them all if I tried. There are just too much. So it's really a matter of picking the 3, 4, 5 things in a week that's going to really fill the cup, that's going to tick the boxes. And then in the in-betweens, it's the beautiful time to, not fill space, but allow them to create. We have a lot of books. We do have a lot of resources on hand that at any point, they can really bring out the craft and just create whatever it is. And then we just follow that curiosity. It starts with craft and then it ends somewhere completely, completely different. But the time and the space and allowing them to truly create, I think is the most valuable resource by far.
No, I can tell you put a lot of thought into this. It really shows. I mean, how do you handle the responsibility of being a parent and also your children's main teacher?
Yeah. Yeah, look, any mum, whether she's unschooling or not, will know that mother load, it's a lot. That the multitasking, the bit that you don't see, the bit that's going on in my head, that load, it weighs really heavy. And I think it depends on your personality type. But for me, I really kind of take it on and I take it really seriously. So I definitely feel it. And some days, some days it definitely gets overwhelming, right? Because you feel like you have to be everything for them, essentially. So it's a constant check-in with myself. I do have some good practices in my life where I check in with myself to see that we're on track, to see that I'm okay, to see that my cup is filled so that I can show up from a place of having enough to give. And yeah, there are definitely times where you feel like, oh, I definitely don't have enough. And I didn't show up as my best self today. And today today felt like we learned nothing, even though I know that that's not true because we learn everywhere and everything. But I have those days and I have those moments. But what I like is that I don't distinguish between being their teacher and being their mother. I feel like I am their privileged companion. And some days it looks like a lot of bookwork. It looks like studying stuff. It looks like finding answers. It looks like doing science. And other days it looks like, long strolls, holding hands and talking about nothing. So, and that's learning too, learning to unload, learning to regulate, learning to speak of our emotions. It's all learning in a beautiful way. So it's allowing myself the grace to know that I am a lot for them in this season. I've chosen to be all of that for them in this season because no one else can be me for them in this season. And allowing them to see it for what it really is. That there is no such thing as a super mum. I just absolutely hate that saying because we set ourselves up to fail and we set each other up to fail. We kind of set this bar that, oh, look at her, she's doing it all. Well, do you know what? She's not. We all have exactly the same amount of hours in a day. So we just choose how we spend it. If your kid, you're not working and teaching your kids, and like you're doing one of those things at a time. So it's doing it all, but it's not doing it all at the same time. And it's just allowing it to be as it should, really, in a natural, less forced, less controlled way. If that answers
That's
your
a really good
question.
point. Yeah. What's a subject you never thought you would teach but ended up loving?
Oh, interesting. What have we been learning about? We learn about lots of different interesting things. I think for me, I was never particularly into science at school. And now I do a lot of science. We do a lot of experiments and concoctions and mixing things. And I actually really, really love it. We've got like a little slot in our calendar every week for science, and I look forward to it. And I like look up all these cool experiments that we could do. And I never thought that that would be me. It was just never something I really enjoyed. I was more of a really studious bookworm kind of person, and like hands-on kind of sciencey stuff didn't sort of interest me. But it's really fun, and we get to learn so much. And what blows my mind is that months later he can still recall exactly what happened there. It was this chemical with that gas that made this and that happen. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm really enjoying that.
Is there any like funny moments or questions your kids have ever asked you while learning?
Yeah, we get them all the time. I think the ones that are, I mean, they're kids, right? So they ask all sorts of funny things about all sorts of things. But the things that are often, well, less funny, but more telling is when they sort of ask you questions really directly about yourself that you don't necessarily realize that they see. So, for example, he would say to me, what's going on today that you're putting on your lipstick that didn't go on yesterday because you didn't put on your lipstick? And you go, wow, they see that. He noticed. And you sort of chuckle to yourself and you go, man, you know me so well. And it's almost hilarious.
I gotta ask you this one. I mean, how do your kids describe unschooling in their own words?
Yeah. What I heard my son say most recently, and this is actually what I say often too. Um, he said to someone, "We just do life," and I love that, and I say that often too. But it depends on the conversation and who you're speaking with, and sometimes I'll say, "Oh, we homeschool for ease of understanding," you know, if I don't necessarily have the capacity to delve into what is unschooling. Sometimes I'll just say we homeschool, but then he chimes in. He's like, "No, we don't, Mum. We don't do any schooling." And homeschooling would be to do schooling at home. We don't do any schooling. So he corrects me on that now. I can't get away with just saying, "Oh, we homeschool," for ease of conversation. Then we would often just say, "We do life together. We design our days to meet our needs, and we do life." And I love that. I love that he feels, whether he truly feels it or says it because we say it, but that's how he prefers to say it. We do life together.
That's incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
if you could take your kids like anywhere in the world just for learning and adventure, where would it go? Where
Mm,
would you go?
yeah, that's a really beautiful question. I have thought about this actually, and I think my husband and I will give you different answers on this. I think he would say, let's go to Disney World because that's just really fun. And yes, we'll do that. But I think I have a real pull towards some of the Scandinavian countries because of how they do life. They believe in, well, first of all, year upon year upon year, they always come out to be the happiest people on earth, some of the happiest nations. And my understanding is that they just have a really intentional way of living their life. And I think for me, it comes down to intention. It's quite community focused and people focused, and yeah, doing life slowly or slower, but on purpose. And yeah, I'm really kind of drawn to the way that they teach and the way that they live, even just, moving around with bicycles rather than cars, moving your body, being friendlier on the environment, only getting from the grocery store what you need because that's all you can carry on your bike. And in 2 or 3 days' time you can go again. And it's really purpose driven rather than big bulk convenience mainstream. So yeah, that would be it for me. Just really kind of soaking in what that life feels like, and we'll do a stint there at one point.
No, it's a great takeaway. I mean, you really dive into the subjects that are not really taught in traditional schooling. I mean,
Yeah.
what's some random fun facts your kids learned that surprised you?
Oh, yeah, we learn a lot of different things. I think, yeah, we do some cool projects that sort of escalate, I guess. It started with the weather, and then it turns into like a
Nice.
whole history and geographic session. And I can't sort of think of any very specifics in this moment, but what's often interesting is what my 2 year old picks up as well. And you don't think she learned or she knew or you thought it completely went over her head. And then the next day she would sort of say, "Oh, that thing we talked about at dinner, that was Bali." And I'm like, "Yeah, you got that. Bali was a place on the map, and we were looking at the globe, and you got it." And then she'd be like, "We go on holiday there." So it's like, wow, she listens in, and it's a powerful reminder that it's a way of life. It really is a way of life. At dinner table, if he's really interested in where are we going and what are we doing, it's not sort of like, "Oh, ask your teacher about Bali tomorrow, honey. Ask Mr. Smith. He'll tell you all about it." It's like, cool. Set aside the plate, bring out the globe, bring out the travel book. They are curious right here, right now. So right now, we are making this happen, and it's a way of life. And how much more they are engaged for a longer period of time because they're truly interested in it. And then, yeah, being able to just recall it because, well, your 2 year old recall it at any other random moment because they were truly invested. It's really cool.
Melissa, what is something you would tell someone that's on the border of doing
Oh,
unschooling?
I would tell them that, and I truly believe this for us to be true, that nothing is permanent. Absolutely nothing is permanent. If you decide to do it, you're not making a decision for the rest of your life or for the rest of your kid's life. And you don't have to think about it like that. You just have to think about it as trying something different and just truly trying it for what it is. And maybe going into it with that mindset is often what allows people to give it a really good go too. Because if you feel like, and I've actually spoke to another mum who there's just this enormous amount of pressure because you have to make a decision as to, is this going to be good? How is it going to compare to school? Can I do it? Do I have the support? Is my children going to thrive? Are we going to fall behind? All the things. It's impossible to make that decision as a permanent decision moving forward without knowing. So for anybody thinking about it, I would say our kids are so resilient, and you are exactly the right companion that they need, even though you might not think it. That is exactly who they need, is you. They just need your presence and to show up and to give it a go. Just to give it a go. Make it a little fun little trial period for yourself. Say, we're going to take the second term and just enjoy it. And so many families never look back because once you've had that togetherness, once you've had that freedom of, oh, we can actually design our life to look the way we want. We're not dictated by school hours. We're not dictated by school holidays. We're not competing with Sally's mum for, this role in the play and this role in the fair and all of that. Yeah, once you've tasted that freedom, it's really hard to go back. So trial it, and it's not permanent. Everything is temporary, everything is figure outable, and everything is changeable. You can go back.
That's a great takeaway. I mean, what happens if your kids want to go to college?
Yeah, so again, it depends where in the world you are. And then it depends what they want to go to college for. So, two things, I guess. In the world that we live in today, there are so many entrepreneurs, or, it's such an uprising of entrepreneurs, people building their own businesses, being digital nomads, and, getting a proper college education is becoming less and less mandatory or important. It's becoming less and less of a, you absolutely need to have this on your CV. If you've got the get up and go, it counts for a lot more. So there's that. There's the question of will they even need to go? And look, if they do, the beauty is, like everything else they do in their childhood, they choose it. And so then this is what we do every day. You choose that path, so then we find the way. You got to learn this. Cool. But you want to learn that because you want to get there. You got to read this, but you want to read that because you've decided that you want to go there. You've got to do this course and that course. So you've got to do some bridging courses. You might have to do some papers. But the beauty of it is that it's exactly what you chose. So that is exactly what you're curious in. That is what you want to learn. So you do what you have to do to get to the place where you want to get to. And that's the skills, I guess, we teach that's the skills that emerge from an unschooled life, is that you choose intentionally and then you carve that way. You create and you walk. You walk how you want to walk to get where you want to get. So there are definitely, there are ways. Yeah.
No, that's a good point. I think a lot of people will agree with you on that one. I've been having this question in my head all day. If unschooling had a mascot, what would it be?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, it will look like freedom. Maybe it'll feel like, maybe it'll be like a rainbow of some kind, It's colorful and it's free and it's beautiful and it brings joy. It brings a lot of moments, beautiful moments. Though, it certainly brings rain too, because you doubt yourself and there's all the judgment and the criticism and the comparison like we spoke about. But it will all feel worth it in the end. There'll be the pot of gold, and it's those beautiful, joyful moments that only rainbows bring.
Well, that's really helpful. I thank you for being on the show. Everyone at home, all the listeners listening in, got a lot to think about. Melissa, you really dove deep into a lot of topics there. I'm hoping the listeners really took a lot away from it, and go chase your dreams, because your dreams will not chase you. And this is Every Day is Friday. Any last words for our listeners?
Exactly that. Like what you just said, chase your dreams. It's what I'm all about as well. Go live a really intentional life. Go live a life on purpose. It's short and it's worth chasing it.
Yep. Go live life to the fullest.
Absolutely.
And we'll see you next week, everyone.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure.